My name's Chris Good, Communications Director for Title Track, and we are really excited for our next guest for the State of Water podcast. This is a bit of a full circle moment here. Yousef Rabhi was one of our first guests on the podcast back in the early years of the early months, actually, of the Clean Water Campaign for Michigan, which launched in 2019. So really honored to have Yousef back. Yousef Rabhi is a Washtenaw County Commissioner and a longtime champion of the working class, of the environment, of clean water, and we're really honored to welcome him back to the podcast. So without further ado, turning it over to Seth Bernard, host of the State of Water podcast.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Yousef. So this is a real honor to be able to sit down in this moment that we're in. You know, there's a lot happening. I know there's a lot of people in the room that are very curious. And also, you know, you and I sat down at, was it Ruse Roast?
I think so.
Yeah, where you meet with your constituents, and you've worn a few different hats in public service over time. And it was really cool in that first conversation. And that was our first official podcast. And it was after a year in 2018 of interviewing candidates and pushing candidates toward solid positions on clean water issues. And that was sort of the focus of the Clean Water Campaign. We talked to Dana Nessel, and we talked to Abdul El Sayed and many, many other people who were running for office who were interested in talking about clean water. And some people got elected, some people didn't. But what we were doing is educating the public and educating candidates in some ways. And in this situation, we have people in the room that are going to have questions, which is great. And they're maybe going to want to dialogue with you as a county commissioner here in Washtenaw County afterward. But let's get things cracked open at the beginning with a little background on you, and then we'll sort of bring into this moment the biggest clean water issues that you and your constituents are sort of facing in this place and time. So pass the mic to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. First of all, it's a real honor to have that sort of like full circle experience, right? Because I do remember at Ruse Roast, I think we were even in the side room that they have now closed off. It's like their storage area, but that's where we used to have our coffee hours, our Yousef and You constituent hours.
Nice.
And that's where we had our that first podcast there. So yeah, my name is Yousef Rabhi. I know many of you in this room actually, but for those listening, I guess I'll start from the beginning because it's relevant to water issues. And I think I might have talked about this on our first podcast, but I can't remember now. It's been so long. But I actually got my start in politics doing water-related stuff. And it was actually when I was in preschool. And so our preschool is called Blossom Home Preschool. We would go out in nature every day and pick up trash and, do all kinds of different things. But one of the things we did was we adopted a segment of Mallett's Creek in Ann Arbor. And as kids, we would go down, in the snow, in the rain, everything. We would go down and we would study the sedimentation levels. And we would, pull out little, crayfish and stuff like that and then put them back. And, we learned about how what happened in our own backyard impacted the stream that impacted the Huron River, that impacted the lakes. And we learned about how our ecosystem worked. And we went door to door in the neighborhood asking people not to put pesticides and herbicides on their lawns, understanding that broader context. Later on, we started something called the Burr Park Children's Wet Meadow Project, which is still there today. I was a super swamper is what we called ourselves. And we planted native plants. Was the first rain garden of its size wet meadow in the city of Ann Arbor. It was a fight with the city actually to get it. We were ripping up lawn and putting in native plants. And at the time in the 90s, that was not something that people viewed positively. So it was a real so that was sort of the beginning for me. And later on, college and high school and college, I should say, really getting involved in the environmental space, really getting involved in the anti-war movement and labor movement, and then ultimately running for county commissioner, winning my first election by a single vote.
I remember that.
Yeah.
One vote counts.
One vote counts, absolutely.
Officially.
I have many one vote stories as well of like who that one vote was. Everybody still claims it, and everybody still gets credit for it. So that's great. And
people need to hear that.
And they do,
yeah.
and they do. And for me, it's like I wouldn't have wanted my political career to start any other way because it's a reminder that the people matter. Every vote matters, and every person matters, not just for the election, but once you're elected to office, you can't dismiss anybody's voice or opinion because we have to be a community all working together. I work for every single person in my district and in the county because that's how it has to be. That's what democracy is about. We have to listen to everybody's voice. But that one vote was the springboard for me to launch my political career. And at the time, I was still a student, actually, at U of M. Had, long hair all the way down to my belt, a handlebar mustache, not looking like the traditional candidate.
You and Noah both.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Hell yeah. So I won another election before I cut it off. Just to be clear, I didn't conform immediately.
There you go.
So exactly. But yeah, so that was my launch into politics. I got 2 votes after a recount. There was a recount, so I doubled my margin of victory, and so I won by 2 votes. It became a mandate at that point, right? But no, so I served 6 years as a county commissioner, ran for state house, was a state legislator for 6 years. Of those 6 years, I served 4 as the Democratic floor leader in the Michigan House, which is sort of the second ranking position within the House caucus. And then when I was term limited, ran for my county commission seat again, and I've been serving since January of 2023 for my second tour of duty as a county commissioner.
Awesome.
So, yeah. Sorry for the long-winded explanation.
No, this is really helpful, and appreciate the origin story too. I think that's hopeful for the parents in the room and the educators in the room, and just knowing that these formative experiences we have as kids. I went to a camp that was water themed when I was a kid too. And my parents had to remind me of that when I started doing this work more seriously, and when we formed the Clean Water Campaign and we're sort of leaning in. My dad was like, I think this goes back to that camp that I sent you to, right? So that's helpful, and also so fundamental, as a young person, to make those connections, to be like, oh, the watershed, the filtration, the water cycle, this is actually at the core of how I survive as a human being and how our communities thrive at the most fundamental level. And if we're compromising our ability to survive, at what kind of deal is that's good enough to wreck our water? There is no deal that is good enough to destroy the human right to clean, affordable drinking water. And so that's part of what motivated us as an organization to start having these conversations. And so here we are, in a place where you serve and where you have lived and continue to. What are you hearing right now from people in your county, and how are you responding to that in terms of the biggest challenges to upholding the human right to clean, affordable drinking water?
Yeah, it's a great question. I want to start by answering it by saying, part of that perspective that I got as a kid and really grew in my mind over the years is this awareness that I think you and I both have, and all of us in this room, of thinking of ourselves, we are part of the watershed. We are part of the watershed. And if you watch the flow of a river, the Huron River, it goes from, let's take Ann Arbor as an example. It goes from, Barton Pond all the way down towards Ypsilanti, but it flows through us to get there in a very, literally the water comes from Barton Pond into the city water system. It comes out of our taps. We put it in our cups. We drink it. It goes into our bodies. Mm-hmm. And then it comes out of our bodies, goes back into the Huron River. And so the river is flowing through our bodies. Yeah. So when you think about it in that way, you think about the PFAS contamination that happened up in Wixom a few years back. And you think, okay, now there's PFAS in the river. That means that PFAS, it has to flow through me too. That's a problem for me as a person, just as much as it's a problem for the river, just as much as it's a problem for the birds and the fish, et cetera. And so anytime there's an assault on our watershed, whether it's groundwater and you live in a rural area where there's groundwater, you live in an urban area where there's river water, lake water, whatever it is, what happens to the water happens to you. An assault on the water is an assault on you because you are water. We are water. And water is how we survive. Water is our life. Yeah. And so when we look in Washtenaw County, what I'm hearing now is there is this multifaceted attack on our water resources and frankly on our environment in a bigger picture. Michigan, corporate America is sort of realizing how valuable Michigan is for its natural resources, for its clean water. We are entering an era where water, the value of water, I think is no longer being recognized in a way, and in a commodifying mentality, in a colonizing mentality, and an imperialist mentality of how do we extract this resource and use it to the advantage of private profit, right? And we're seeing that with everything from this onslaught of data centers that are coming to our community to the gravel mine in Ann Arbor Township that is seeking an expansion that is fouling people's wells. I've seen videos of water running brown out of people's taps because the gravel mine is no longer respecting environmental laws that it's supposed to be, to the biodigester that's been proposed down in Freedom Township, to the expansion of the Arbor Hills landfill that's being proposed. There is just a multifaceted attack on our water resources. The Gelman plume that's been in Ann Arbor for the last 45 years, that continues to be a problem and continues to inch towards our water supply. And so I think it's easy enough for people to sort of say, well, I don't want this data center in my community. But I think what I'm trying to encourage people to start to think about is the fact that this isn't just about your community. It's not just about, if you're in Ann Arbor, it's not just the Gelman plume that you need to be worried about. You need to be worried about that biodigester out in Freedom Township and the data center down in Saline Township and the data center over in Ypsilanti Township. All this water is interconnected, and it is interconnected to us. And so if they're going to take away fresh, clean water in Saline Township, that is an assault on my water, even as an Ann Arbor resident. It doesn't matter where we are in the county. It doesn't matter where we are in the state. We are all the Great Lakes watershed, and we have to be careful about anything that happens, because these companies are not doing it, doing these projects to help our clean air, clean water. They're doing it for profits. They're doing it to come here to extract from our community, not to give back, but to extract from our community as much as they can for their own private profits and private gain. And these companies, as you see, are massive profit centers that have gained and earned multiple billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars in profits off the backs of people's fresh air, clean water, their ability to live, relatively noise-free lives. I mean, a lot of these data centers are very noisy, energy consuming, which ultimately consumes our, frankly, our carbon resources and puts more carbon in the atmosphere, and increases rates. We've seen it time and time again. So it is. These problems are multifaceted, and I try to encourage people to think about the larger assault that's happening on our county right now. It's not one individual project. It's this large project that is coming and is knocking on our door, and we all need to band together, regardless of the specific cause that you want to be involved in. You have to band together to resist them all, or else it'll be death by a million cuts.
Yeah, well said. So, and what you're speaking to that I'm hearing is the importance of a strong public sector to really, and that's what we're supposed to have, and that's what the idea or the dream is that, private, the force of a private entity coming in and understandably just trying to maximize their return on their investment and minimize the risk involved and give the biggest return to their shareholders. That's basically the game, right? But to be able to do that to a constituency that is engaged and paying attention is very difficult to sort of just cut and run, to be boom and bust. We're going to extract everything we can. Nobody's going to notice. Very difficult when people are engaged. But when people have already sort of said, well, this is inevitable, I'm just going to keep doom scrolling and accept the terms and conditions, that's where they can sort of get away with fast tracking things and taking advantage of communities and really not just taking advantage of them, but perpetuating crimes against humanity. And so what we're hearing from people around the country, and this has been a very fast moving, emergent experience that people are having. And I think that you go back a year and we didn't have as many test cases. We had a lot of data centers. There's over 1,200 data centers all over the country. But the new ones are hyperscale AI data centers. So sometimes they're 100 times bigger than a previous data center. And some of you have been to harvest gathering on the farm where I grew up. And so up north in Kalkaska County, they wanted to do a data center that's 10 times as big as the farm, and to do it on public land and the headwaters of our trout stream, the Boardman River, and et cetera. And so they were sort of anticipating this is going to be, all we got to do is talk to the commissioners and talk to the city president, and we're going to be good to go. We got their endorsement. But what's actually happened very quickly is that the public has organized across incredible, previously unimaginable lines that were sort of drawn before us. And the entire political spectrum of working class people is organizing to say, wait a second, this is not working for us. We need to completely slow this down, reevaluate. And there's a lack of transparency, correct, and information that's been redacted under all kinds of pretenses, many of them trade secrets. So there's promises being given like, hey, we're not going to take the water. It's a closed loop system. But then the examples that we have are extractive. The one in Wisconsin is taking 8 million gallons a week, and people are selling their land. You have veterans. We've got folks from Saline Township here who have served and welcome home. And then it's like you're ready to have a family, and this giant monstrosity that makes a loud noise 24/7 and pollutes the air and is light pollution and extracting groundwater. These are the kinds of stories that are coming out from all over the country and now here in this county. And so can you talk a little bit about how people are responding and how we can respond and organize, and how you're sort of listening to people? And then we'll actually listen to people. We'll take some questions from the crowd and we'll get it all opened up here. So yeah, getting right into this moment, what are we facing in this county right now, and how are people responding to it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack in what you said, and I want to try to, get to a lot of it. One of the things I want to start off with saying is, like, we are in a time when the assault on public resources is at an all-time high. We need to protect our public land, our public waters, and that, projects like you were talking about that are seeking to use public land to extract private profit, that is a problem that is on the rise that we need to be really guarded against. And I would add to that it is not just the utilization of public goods, but the utilization of public funds, too, that are being used to funnel from your pockets to the pockets of the richest Americans and the richest multinational companies. And so I was truly baffled when the legislature passed the law that allows for, or that encourages actually, data centers to come to our state. Already we know that data centers need water, they need colder temperatures. Of course, they're going to be trying to come to Michigan anyways. Why are we're like rolling out the red carpet and paying them to come exploit us? Yeah. It's ridiculous. Yeah. And we're paying them from our school aid money. The sales tax exemption that they get, 70+% of it comes from our schools. And 10% of it comes from our local governments. That's sales taxes that go directly to our cities and our townships to fund our roads, to fund our police and fire, and they're taking that money away. That doesn't go anymore. That is sales tax that they get to pocket now. That doesn't go anymore. And there's all kinds of other tax incentives that the state's giving. Sometimes it's cash payments that they're giving to some of these larger projects. And the worst part of all of this, and I saw this in the legislature, right, firsthand for 6 years as a legislator, there is a lot of wheeling and dealing that happens. There is a lot of lobby money. There is a lot of checks that are cut to people and to people's families to keep people in the system. And I will say these non-disclosure agreements that people are signing, legislators are signing them, local officials are signing them, and this whole trade secret thing is BS. It is really just a way to control the narrative. There is no reason that a publicly elected official should ever limit their ability to speak on behalf of their taxpayers and voters. If you sign a non-disclosure agreement, that is a problem. As any elected official, do not sign a non-disclosure agreement. It's wrong. We have a democracy. You're supposed to be the people's advocate, but you're signing a non-disclosure agreement with a frickin' company to say nothing about a project that's coming to your community. That's not okay. No. It's fundamentally wrong. And
unacceptable.
So it's unacceptable. And this is happening. It's happening. I mean, at one point, not to go too far in the weeds, but when I was in Lansing, they created the SOAR Fund, which is one of these big corporate welfare accounts that they have. I railed against it, fought against it. And I remember at the time, a bunch of my colleagues signed these non-disclosure agreements. I did not, but they weren't allowed to talk about these projects. And it's just so wrong to have billions of dollars of public money. Think of what we could do as a community with billions of dollars, or as a state. They're looking for all this money for roads. They're looking for money for water. For the kids in Flint, still don't have lead-free pipes throughout the city, clean water coming out. billion, what could that have done to help support that? The last thing I'll say here, because all of this is it's very troubling, it's very wrong, and we are in a time of heightened awareness, but all of this is possible. Those non-disclosure agreements, the elitism of our political structures, and frankly, all parties involved, literally, in this. All of that and the profits, we have never before in our history seen this widening gap between the wealthy and the rest of us. And it is widening, and it is widening, and it is widening. Yeah. All of that is made possible by a system that is reliant on division. Division amongst people. You're a Republican, you go over here. You're a Democrat, you go over here. You are rural, you go over here. You're urban, you go over here. And they rely on those divisions in order to keep their profits coming, in order to keep the politicians in their pocket. It is all reliant on the same fundamental thing. And what is dangerous to them about this moment is things like what happened in Saline Township at downtown Saline with that rally, where you had Republicans, Democrats, Green Party, Socialists, rural, urban, everybody coming together to say, we are working class and we do not believe that this is good for our community. Yeah. And that is scary to the DTE executives. It's scary to the executives of these AI companies, because they are seeing communities that shouldn't be coming together in their eyes that are coming together, that are standing up and saying, screw the differences that you want to impose on us. We are going to stand up for our air, for our water, for our energy rates, for our communities. And that is fundamentally what we have to keep doing in order to win.
Absolutely. And that also comes down to this human relationships. And it's the way that we can come together and see our common interests and our common future. And sometimes human relationships with people within the establishment that are willing to be reformers, and people in the public sector that are willing to build new models that we can move toward and new ways of doing things. But without a strong public sector, without 5,000 people voicing their concern last week and 800 people trying to get on a meeting that crashed, was like, okay, this thing is not going to be fast-tracked in the way everyone was expecting it to be. And so people power does work, and it can slow things down. It can make things more democratic and deliberate. And I say democratic in terms of actual democracy. Our dream of democracy, our dream of our republic, we have to breathe life into it and not just act like a bunch of subjects, And so in that spirit here, I think we're going to crack it open and see if folks in the audience have some questions. I think that our title track team has Chris, our communications director, has a microphone there.
I just want to also shout out Chris, because I've known Chris for a long time, and it was cool to walk into the room and be like, Chris, what's up, man? So thanks for all your good work.
I'm going to stay focused on the data center and kind of the tech industry at large marching forward unchecked. And I wonder, A, is this movement already going on that I'm going to ask you about? And B, if it's not, does anybody want to start it? And that is kind of the keeping in check an unchecked business that isn't creating that much value. There's this sense of, some of my friends are like, well, it's just going to go forward. It's like, well, why? What has it made better so far? Has it made music better for you? Has it made looking for a job better for you? Has it made, most people say, no, I do not want this AI moving forward. I do not want any more of these advances. I do not want, what is it making? It just seems like it's creating this huge tacky waste without providing any value. And so besides DTE, besides the water, all of that, it's like, why? I feel like we've given sort of a bunch of rich kids a pocketbook to play with, and they're building something that is not good. And we're not, if nobody's out there talking about that, that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about go away, make something better for humanity with your brains and money, because this isn't just a foregone conclusion that this is a smart thing. It's been marketed and shoved down our throat that it's a smart thing, but as far as I can tell from my lived experience, it has not. It has not made the medical system better. It has not made jobs better. You know what I mean? It's reduced jobs. It's quashed the environment. So is there somebody within the realm of politics, government, national, whatever, that is openly saying, hey, why are we still supporting this industry charging forward that's putting money into whatever? Making it easier to online gamble, making it easier to ignore your clients with chatbots, like what is the value that they're allegedly creating that is deserving all the time and attention that it gets? Because it seems like insanity to me. Thank you.
That is an amazing question. There's at least one elected official that's saying those things, me. So I got you. And hopefully there's more too. It is, everything that you said is absolutely spot on though. And, I remember back, I was on a panel at the University of Michigan. A group of college students had invited me to participate in a panel about like technology and technological advancements. This was kind of before the AI discussion started. And, I feel like I kind of, I didn't make myself the popular one in the room because like all these students are like, really excited about like, the word I would use is techno-positive, like positive about all technology. It's like, yeah, that's great. And the response that I had is like, technology is a moral question. The moral question is it making life better for people, or is it making profits higher for certain companies? Is it actually saving lives, or is it just costing people jobs? You have to ask that question about any technology. I mean, you look at the self-checkout counter at Kroger. Is that helping society? Like genuinely, is that helping society? I don't think you could really argue that it is, right? And so during this COVID-19 pandemic, we saw this moment of extreme technologization. I just made that up. There's probably a better word for it, but the world of technology sort of started to replace humanity in so many different ways. And we've started to, I think, hopefully people asking themselves of like, does this actually make things better? There's some technological advancements that are hugely important in the medical field that have saved countless lives. The research, into cancer, the research on dementia and Alzheimer's. I mean, there's so much in technology that has advanced our lives that we need to be grateful and supportive of. But it's always going back to that question: who is it helping and who is it hurting? Right? With any technological question, fundamentally. And in the case of AI, I agree with you fully. There is a very difficult, I think, for them to make the argument of who is it helping versus who is it hurting, because fundamentally it is helping drive a profit motive, right? Anybody that wants to use AI, it's like, even if you want to use it in your own personal, day-to-day at your job or in your own personal life, and you're like, well, I'm going to make things easy on myself and just AI it or whatever. You are costing somebody along the way the opportunity to be part of your life, the opportunity to be creative, the opportunity to, or maybe it's a job that you've now replaced in your day-to-day. So it's these big companies that are like massively laying off people, 4,000 people laid off at all these tech companies, and thousands of people laid off at tech companies here and there, thousands of people laid off at other. It's that, but it's also that like day-to-day sort of like trickle that we all now participate in, because we are in this society that favors ease for the benefit of profit. Even as individuals, we're like incentivized to try to maximize our own personal profits. And so externalizing, well, maybe I don't need to hire a musician to do X, Y, and Z, or hire a videographer to make this video for me, or hire a graphic artist to make this, because I can just do it myself. And that saves me money. And for my small business, or I want to, whatever it is, you are removing that out of the equation. And so that is a real problem that is costing jobs. But the silver lining in all this, I think the one benefit that I would argue that AI is creating is that it is reawakening an awareness of our analog being, and like our desire for analog music, and our desire for human creation, and our desire for, art that is created by a real person, and crafts that are created by real people. And I think that even in the early stages of AI, we're starting this process of like revaluing things that are made by hand. And I think that really is the only silver lining I can think of, because it certainly made me appreciate it more. And I think it's making folks appreciate it more. There's this growing awareness around that.
I would add to, I think it's important for us to recognize that AI as it currently is being deployed is not popular. Like, there's a lot of data to support that people are not liking this slop that's invaded our lives. We didn't ask for it. And also, it's not profitable yet. And part of the rush of these data centers is that they're being funded on high interest loans, so they're losing money quickly, and they're trying to move them in very quickly. But people are like, wait a second, AI was supposed to clean up this PFAS plume. Like, it was supposed to be deployed in revolutionary ways to improve quality of life and give us more leisure time to create art, not steal our art, not be a parasite of human culture, but to allow us more space to do culture and to be relational. And so I think that this, again, it's a tool. So, like, how do I use a tool? Maybe I love to use a hammer, but I don't want someone selling me a hammer that has a poison tip. Like, I didn't ask for that. I didn't ask for the poison. And so it's like, we need to take ourselves seriously as creators of the future as well, and not just take these utopian dreams of the titans of industry, which they've never come true. I mean, the titans of industry have always been bold in creating these visions to sell what they're doing. And one thing, I'll tell this story, I'll try to make it quick, but this is, I think, a cautionary tale where industry colluded with the powers that be in terms of our elected officials to create the St. Lawrence Seaway. And it was sold to the public as this is an inevitable revolutionary story for all of us to benefit from. We're going to become the Mediterranean of North America. It's going to be like the Riviera, and we're going to have billions of dollars in revenue. And it was pretty short-sighted, and they built it, and the public got involved, and our tax money went to it. But then they built it too small, and the average size of ships got bigger. And in the time that it was used, all these invasive species came in that we didn't foresee, and there wasn't enough public oversight, and we got past our threshold in invasives, and we didn't end up being able to accommodate the shipping industry on the scale that was promised. So we lost the revenue, and we gained hundreds of billions of quagga mussels that are filter feeding the Great Lakes every day, and the people that imposed this on us are not taking responsibility for cleaning it up. So the public ended up not getting the economic benefit and having huge environmental degradation. And it was all presented as a utopia sandwich on we're all going to get rich bread. And that's exactly what's happening now. It's like, we don't exactly know where the power is going to come from, but once it happens, all of us are going to be these brilliant genius cyborgs who can be athletic, and it's just like, wait, nobody wants to be a cyborg. And so we've got, some of us have had dreams of being a cyborg, but seriously, like, it really, to say it out loud is ridiculous, but it's true, and I think it needs to be said.
Well, yeah, no, and I think that there often with any technology, there's sort of this like current, right, that is like, if you're not with the technology, then you're some kind of like weird Luddite that is, just standing in the way of progress, right? Similar to your St. Lawrence Seaway argument. I'm sure a lot of people were like, hey, this maybe we haven't thought about all the consequences, and they were like shoot off the stage and thrown off into the mud or something.
Public oversight was completely marginalized.
Gone, yeah. There needs to be, with anything like this, a firm public process of question asking, which is going back to like the DTE thing. There needs to be questions asked with anything like this. That's how you vet, things come out like, what if there is invasive species that come down?
Yep.
But so that is super critical. And I was thinking about this the other day too, because it's like, the stuff that is coming out of the AI realm is like so asinine in some ways too. Because I was online and I saw this video, and it's like literally like this cup dumping little pieces of felt on a piece of toast, and then a spoon like scrunching it around, and it's like this ASMR sound. Yeah. And it's like AI created that, and there's all these videos out there of this.
A lot of that.
And it's like, okay, so we're sacrificing our clean air and water so that we can see this like weird video. Like, I'm totally cool with never seeing that video again if it means I get to, have a nice clean glass of water that I can drink. That's fine with me.
Yeah.
And it's like, so it's really goes back to all that. And I appreciate the question. And I do hope that there's more movements that build up around that question, because I think that's fundamental to all this. And the last thing I just want to quickly say, and I know there's another question, is all of this is in the context of the sort of like out of control, rampant, profit-seeking capitalist system that we're in. Of these products are not being produced for the benevolence of society. It's not like the polio vaccine where the guy was like, hey, I solved this problem and now I'm going to give it for free to society to heal people. That's not what's happening here. It's not like these are benevolent, rich overlords that are like, we're going to give you AI to solve all of your problems. They are trying to get people fired so that they can make more money and just make more money generally. Like there's all this fear of like immigrants are taking our jobs, stuff like that. We need to be afraid of the data centers taking our jobs. They're the ones that are taking the jobs. And they're taking the jobs because they are trying to make more money. Every person that they have to have on payroll has healthcare, has benefits, has this. That's money that they lose. They can streamline that by having AI. And it is all within the context of this endless profit seeking. How much money do these people need? We're at the hundreds.
They're the richest people that have ever walked the earth.
We're getting close to $1 trillion for some of these people in personal wealth. I mean, good God.
You can't win at it.
The wealthy are the worst thing that's happened to our environment. I'll just say it.
That whole insatiable need for more within the context of an extractive system where there isn't reciprocity built into it. I mean, what's the end game there? It's
more helicopters shooting off into space. I mean, all of that is like you're wasting environmental resources to do that. How many homes do you need? How big does your home need to be to heat the home? To all this, you have 6-7 different mansions all across the country that you're heating. Like, think about the earth for once. Like, do you need all that? Like, wealth produces waste, basically.
Yep.
And it is like the poorest people have the lowest environmental impact.
Yeah.
And and it's like the worst thing that's happened to our planet is this agglomeration of wealth and the allowance of these people that are just wasting resources on stuff that they don't need to survive.
Yeah, exactly. And we do need water to survive. And I think part of the way that I try to handle all of this on a day-to-day basis is I sort of have these two frames of like systems change and harm reduction. So we need to change the system from an extractive system where we're all playing a game to amass capital at the expense of living systems and labor. Like, let's go all the way upstream to the headwaters of whatever the problem is and try to change it in a fundamental way. But then there's harm reduction. It's like, where is the harm? Who are the most vulnerable? How can we reduce that? And sometimes you can spend a day and you do a little harm reduction and it really matters to the people that you reduced harm for. And maybe in the process, they're closer to where the decision's made. The people closest to the pain should be closest to the power, but often aren't. And I think also is just breathing humanity into the process. And like music and arts and culture, sometimes I've made some pretty unlikely, I've established a rapport with someone who might seem to be my enemy politically or sort of ethically. But it's like, no, we both like this musical artist. We have that in common, and now we can talk. And now it's sort of like, well, maybe you're going to do your job, maybe you're not, but we're sure going to pressure you to do your job. And in this case, we're talking about the Michigan Public Service Commission. Their job is to regulate a publicly regulated utility. This is how our system is supposed to work. And our utility companies should have citizen oversight. And so if people don't engage with that and don't even try, then the MPSC is not going to hear from the public. They're going to hear from the utilities that they're supposed to be regulating. And so even within the process, you come across a lot of historic corruption where people are sort of used to being able to get their way through campaign contributions. But if citizens show up in mass, like we have in the last couple weeks, to overwhelm the process, then all of a sudden the MPSC is caught between a rock and a hard place. And the rock is the people, and the hard place is corruption. So you put a lens on them, and it can change things. And again, it starts with taking yourself seriously, engaging with your public officials, having conversations. And again, like if you don't take yourself seriously and think it's all done, it's just like, okay, I'm going to have to look at Shack on a Yak, and it's 10 gallons of water every time I open Instagram. No shade on whoever just posted Shack on a Yak, but I had to look at it. And it's like, that's 10 gallons of water. And that is not a revolutionary environmental solution. So let's get ourselves to the table. Another question here? Yeah.
I'm from Saline Township. They want to, do whatever they want to do to ruin the wetlands out there. I've recently heard that they want to. So I don't know if everyone knows, but it's always been talked about. It's around 200, 250 acres, but their entire property is like 1,000 acres. Roughly half's in Saline Township and half is in Bridgewater Township. And I think it gets missed in the news a lot that it's only a couple hundred acres. And then some of the reasons they can't build on some of that is because it's wetlands. So they want what they're planning to do, though, is dewater that site. And I recently learned that they want to also dig or bore 2 12-inch well heads to supply a on-site cement factory, which was never anything that I ever heard about prior. They are talking about using the closed loop system too, and they said the only well they would need would be similar to like what you would have at a residence, just to supply the people who are working there with water for, the kitchen or the bathroom or whatever. But now all of a sudden, 2 12-inch wells. Dewatering.
Yeah, and if you try to look at the details, it's been redacted.
Yeah, I'm sure
you
it
can't
is.
see it.
Yeah. And to address the closed loop system, I don't know how much you know about it. I'm asking as much as I'm saying, but from what I know about it, and in fact, the closed loop system, they describe it as being kind of like a car radiator, in which the water, or maybe like the air conditioner in your house, the water recirculates, but what they failed to, they sort of disclosed it. I think the guy's Brent, the CEO or VP of Related Digital, said at one of our meetings that, it gets discharged into the Saline River, and it just has a small amount of glycol in it. Just a little antifreeze. But I was sent an article just yesterday that's talked about what they're actually like a ticking time bomb. They're way worse, of course, than they allege. In fact, as the water with glycol and whatever, the rust inhibitors, et cetera, circulates around in the system, it becomes more and more concentrated with each loop that it takes. So when they eventually discharge it into the Saline River, it's highly concentrated. It's not just a little glycol, like they like to say. So, and I don't know if you guys know more about that. If you could comment on that, I guess that would be my roundabout way of getting around to a question. If you guys know any more about that, if you could discuss that, that'd be great.
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank you for all the work that you're doing, and for being such a strong voice on this issue and a leader in your community. It's been really cool to get to know you and to meet you and to see how you've brought people together throughout this process. So thank you for the work that you're doing.
I second that emotion.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, round of applause for sure. But to your question, a few things. So one, just because they say closed loop doesn't, first of all, there's going to be water needed throughout the process, new water needed. What you've described is, one type of the closed loop system that they have. And, as you're talking about the concentration going up and up and up, what's happening is the water is going down and down and down because there's always going to be some loss of water. And so then it gets to a point where they have to discharge and basically start anew. It's closed loop, but up to a point. At a certain point, they're going to need to add more water to it. And so it's never really truly closed loop because there's evaporation, there's leakage throughout the system. And so they do have to bring more water in. And then as you're talking about that discharge piece, I mean, all of this, all of this is sort of just, it's shrugged off as like, well, like you said, don't worry about it, right? It's not a big deal. Well, just like the St. Lawrence Seaway example, suddenly it becomes a big deal when we find out years down the road that, and then the wetland thing too is like, I was, a member of Ducks Unlimited for a long time, donated some money. They do all this work to like restore wetlands across the country for like, folks that enjoy hunting, and the best way to restore wetlands is by not screwing them up in the first place. And that's exactly what they're doing. So like anytime there's a permit to screw up a wetland or to dewater a wetland, to me, that's like, that in and of itself should be, I don't care if you have a closed loop, whatever loop you have, you're taking a wetland out. Taking a wetland out means more flooding for the neighbors too when there's rain events, because that's less water capacity to hold when there's big rain events. And boy, are we seeing bigger and bigger rain events, these days. So we need those wetlands. We need every inch of those wetlands. And unfortunately, I used to say this, during the Snyder administration, but it's unfortunately become true now as well, that Eagle and a lot of our government regulators that should be there to stand in the way of people of doing this are basically have become this like concierge service of like, let's help you navigate through the process of regulation to get the outcome that you want, not to actually put up the barrier to say, no, you can't do this, right? And so I don't know how the meeting is going to go with Eagle, but unfortunately we're seeing this trend where people are valuing a perceived economic benefit over that long-term knowledge of like, how are we going to have clean water? What about flooding? What about our air? What about all the animals that depend on that ecosystem? And we're valuing the economic impact on this pedestal, and it's almost blinding our elected officials and our regulators to any other considerations, human or natural, as like economic, and that's it, right? But it's economic for who? It's how many jobs are we creating here? Not that many. We're creating, again, profits for somebody who doesn't even live in our community.
Yeah. And I would just say, too, when I heard closed loop system for the first time, it was from an official from Meta speaking at the One Water Summit, which is the largest convening of the water sector in the United States. This was the first week of July in Pittsburgh. And so he said, yeah, we got a closed loop system. It was very vague. And I thought, okay, the technology is evolving, because the numbers that I'm seeing here are like horrific. I mean, it's like there's responsible industrial use, and then there's like 1,000 times worse than the worst and most irresponsible industrial use that any of us have ever heard of. It's almost like, am I in a comic book? This is a nightmare. But then, okay, a closed loop system, what does that look like? So I thought, okay, maybe it's evolving. Maybe some of the public-led pressure is leading to better compromises, as can happen and often does happen when people get to the table. But his whole scene was very vague, and everybody else on the panel were real people trying to serve the public, like the woman in charge. I mean, I felt so horrible for this woman. She was in charge of municipal water for Franklin County, Ohio, and she basically walked us through her life over the last couple of years. Like, now I'm overwhelmed. There's more than 20 data centers in my county, and I don't know what they're doing. There's no transparency, and I got my phone ringing off the hook every day. I don't have enough staff to keep up with the emails and the phone calls I'm getting from people who are expecting to have their right to water delivered, and it's being compromised by industries that are not regulated. And so the entities that are responsible to regulate them. So anyway, so then I'm like, okay, what is the closed loop system? I started researching it, and I have yet to find a closed loop system that is acceptable in any way. They're using
that's
a lot
actually
less.
Closed loop.
That is actually closed loop. It's greenwashing. Yeah. And so it would be wonderful if there was a closed loop system, because that would mean it isn't using any water. But that is definitely not the case. So sometimes we get gaslit, and it's like, you can do that. You can do it. It's sales. You just lie to people to sell your product. And so we need to put some guardrails on this whole thing. And it's the Wild West. It's an emergent technology. People are making money hand over fist. And the public needs to catch up and stand on business and say no. And the good news is that is happening. And in Kalkaska, we stopped the data center. Part of it was because the developer has to live in a community with us. And he listened. Same thing happened in Howell last night. The folks that were trying to organize and attract a data center said, hey, we're going to reconsider this because we heard you overwhelmingly. And we know that you're outraged, and we want to keep being your neighbors. And we would rather belong to a community than get rich and be hated. And it's like, yeah, humanity has a real shot here. So we got time for one more question.
I have one, and you almost sort of just answered it, but I was wondering, what sort of thoughts and guidance would you give to the local township boards and clerks who often get overwhelmed? And like with Saline Township, the train ran over them. The governor's behind this. There's a lot of money, and in a lot of ways, it looks like the fix is in. But you could just see them getting overwhelmed. They ended up with legal problems. They couldn't fight that. They did a settlement. How do you prevent that, I guess, in the future?
That's a great question. So there's a few things there. The first is, I would say, one of the things I've learned in politics now, being an elected official for 15 years, is you have to stand strong. And I know that's like an obvious statement, but there are always going to be massive headwinds. The governor's supporting the project. That's a big deal, right? And you're just this small township. You think of yourself as I'm just an ant that they're going to squash on the way, right? It is always, I would rather get squashed while standing up than to capitulate and not know the power that I could have had to win. And I think it's important for the smallest township and the citizen who feels the most powerless to remember that you have power. You have power, and you are a human, just like the governor is a human, and we're all here, and we have to stand up and we have to push back. And for these townships too, the other thing I would say is, if you're feeling the pressure and there's financial, issues involved too, like, hey, we don't have enough money to fight these guys. They have unlimited money. We have, very limited money. Ask your community to help. That's okay to do that. I'm sure that if they had, there would have been I would have donated to a legal defense fund. I don't even live in Saline Township. I think there would have been a ripple effect across the state, across the country, of people saying, yes, we want to help. There's environmental groups out there that have resources that could help. There's other organizations, there's other elected officials. Maybe I could have gotten the county to help with some legal defense funds. And we can all come together and recognize our shared our intertwined outcomes here, and all pitch in to make this happen. So don't be afraid in the face of these powerful people pushing and pushing and pushing. Stand up, stand strong, and don't be afraid to lose your seat for God's sake. I respect if an elected official is willing to stand up for what's right, regardless of the cost to them politically. That is a politician that I want to get to know and be friends with and support and help. And I think the members of the public in the room and those listening at home should also be looking out for that. Is your elected official standing strong when it's not convenient? Or is your elected official just kind of going along to get along, to keep elected, to stay in office? And that's the distinction. The other thing I want to say is, for those that are watching and for those in the room, don't be afraid to run for office yourselves and hold your elected officials accountable. And if they're not willing to stand up and stand strong, if they're not willing to put their necks out, then run against them and challenge them in the next election. And frankly, the worst case scenario is you lose and you create a situation where they have to be better because you're holding them accountable at the ballot box. And best case scenario, you win, and then you get to be at the table fighting for these issues and standing strong. So and I saw this all the time as a state rep. The governor at one point called me to try to push me towards, badger me into supporting, a lot of the corporate welfare stuff that she was doing. I wanted to introduce a bill that would have reduced some of the corporate welfare that the state already gave out at the time when she was trying to push for this SOAR fund to happen. And she called me to try to pressure me into, backing out. And you have to stand strong, even when those most powerful voices are barreling down on you, even when everybody else is like, we're going to go along with this because technology is great and you're just crazy for thinking the way you're thinking. The reality is there's probably dozens, if not hundreds, if not thousands of people out there that are thinking just the way that you are. And I found that as an elected official. I am comfortable being the lone no vote at the table. I don't need to be part of the group. I don't need to be part of the social club. I didn't run for office to make friends. I ran for office to do what is right. So look for that in an elected official. Support your elected officials that do that. And if they're not, then run against them.
All of that. And I would also add to that, I would also add to that when you get to that hyper-local level, sometimes that's really the best shot that you have at democracy, and at economic democracy specifically, where you have more of an impact on the economic decisions that affect your life immediately at the township level, at the city, the county level. And people are so worn down from a lack of economic democracy where they feel like they're underneath the shadow of this large boot economically and that it just keeps getting worse. But in terms of, again, doing everything that Yousef just said and breathing life into the people that breathe life in our communities and running and emboldening yourself to make those decisions. But then I think also the other thing I'll add is that every sector has power. And that, I mean, the people in tech that are standing for ethical tech, the coders that are saying, hey, I'm not willing, I've been in tech for 20 years and now I'm being asked to train my replacement in terms of AI. That's not ethical AI. That's unethical. So people within the sector don't have to be like, oh, I'm in this sector that everybody hates. No, stand on where you want to guide that sector. People within the utilities that are doing good, that are trying to reform the utilities. If there's one person in the Public Service Commission, Michigan Public Service, if there's one person that you know in there, to lean into that relationship and really try to hold them accountable. And again, it's the other thing that could come of this is the biggest shift in our leadership that we've ever seen, because I believe that this will be the biggest issue in the 2026 elections. From what I've seen so far, a lot of the higher-ups have no clue how unpopular their positions are and how radioactive this issue has become for them, and how many of their biggest supporters are absolutely angry and just filled with outrage and betrayal at what they've done. And that opens up the field for all kinds of possibilities as long as we continue to organize and come together and really breathe life into the whole process and not undervalue our own power within it.
And I think it's okay to be angry. It's okay to sit with that anger and to feel like for a long time, when I started in politics, it was like the Obama days and it was like hope and change and all that, which I thought was a very powerful message. And now we're in this time where there is anger and we feel that our elected officials are not listening to us. And there's this disconnect as the rich and the poor, glide apart and the elected officials glide towards the wealthy because they think that's where the power is. They think I need money for my campaigns. I need money for this. And it's a lifestyle that I'm attracted to. And we have to sit with the anger that we feel in the moment where we see that. And it's okay to feel angry and then to channel that anger into action and to do something about it. And the last thing I want to say is there is action that can be taken in the smallest of ways on all of these issues. And it is even if you're a musician, it's picking up your musical instrument and playing real music. That is an act of resistance, right? It's drinking a beer from Mothfire because that's real beer made locally. That is an act of resistance.
I know who made this. I'm on board.
Right? Yes, I know who made this. I'm on board. And it's like there are all these small businesses out there that are struggling to survive right now because these big mega corporations are taking over. It's the Amazons that are. You have to go online to buy everything now, and somebody will deliver it to your door. Well, take that little inconvenience and go downtown to that mom and pop store and buy the thing in person.
Yeah.
Like that is an act of resistance, right? You're not taking the most convenient thing, but you are going and you are interacting with another human being and you are building community. And linking this back to what I said earlier, it is when we build community, when we break down those barriers, when we say it's not about me in the box that I'm in, the Republican, the Democrat, the whatever, in the local or the city or the township or the rural. It's not the box that I'm in. It's the humanity that I feel towards my fellow human, and it is building those bonds that is the greatest act of resistance and the thing that makes the powerful and the elite the most afraid.
Folks, Yousef Rabhi, how about it? Another big hand for Noah Kaplan. Thank you, Noah. I'm going to play some tunes, and we're going to have a few more minutes of a soiree, handing it over to our communications director to bring us into the next phase, Chris Good.
Yeah, thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. Thanks again to Yousef and to Noah for joining us. Yousef has to... I know Yousef has to run here right now, but one of the things I respect most about him is how accessible he is as a public servant. So there are many ways to be in touch with him as a resource, as an advocate, or just to get additional info from him. He's up to so much good stuff in our community. So thanks again for coming out. And yeah, absolutely. And before we transition to some music, just want to give a big shout out to my dear friend and colleague here, Seth Bernard, who this podcast was kind of his vision, the Clean Water Campaign from Michigan years ago that launched. And he just is a freshly awarded climate champion by the Michigan Climate Action Network, in particular for the use of creative expression to advocate for climate action. But Seth brings that into all realms of his work, and you're seeing it here with the clean water work. So before we transition to Seth playing some music, just want to thank the Leon Loft folks again for having us. What a great team, and have been so hospitable. So thank you again for having us.